sense, being an explorer of consciousness is an incredible life. I think one of the things that Yogananda once said is that when you look within, there's thousands and thousands of universes within us. And so, for me, one of the most important things is that when we're going inward, when we're investigating and opening to these worlds within us, that yes, it's wonderful to open into new worlds of bliss, new realms of spaciousness and emptiness, even realms of the falling away of the self, that it's so important to step into these spaces. But simultaneously, I find it maybe even sometimes more important to look within ourselves and find all the different psychological blocks within us, all the different shadows within our consciousness. Because to me, one of the things I learned very, very early on in the spiritual path was that I could open to these incredible states of peace and bliss. But then there was times later in the day when I couldn't even get down on my knees and acknowledge what my daughter needed. So what was it within me that I needed to look at? What aspects of my conditioned self did I need to shine the light of awareness into? And so for many years I've always been curious about how these different shadows within us, how these different aspects of our conditioned sense of self, how they eclipse our own divinity, our own beauty, and how that beauty manifests itself in the world. And so for me, I've been a big fan of, and I think that's where most of the work that I do is with individuals, and just sitting down with them and shining the light of awareness into those dark places, and in a real sense, being an explorer, exploring the realms of our psyche, exploring things in our outward life which don't work. And we can find different places within ourselves which are tight, which are tense, where we're holding on to this or that. But to be willing to open to those places within us from an open heart, from a place of spaciousness and clarity, and always compassion. And from this space of compassion, can we look at these shadows? Can we see how perhaps, the way our father treated us or our mother treated us is getting in the way of us seeing clearly and being a more loving presence in the world? Can we see that our educational conditioning gets in the way of how we experience and relate to reality? Can we see that there's these various wounds within us that are just begging us to come forward, to be met with love and released? And so very much what's required is this total embrace of darkness. For there to be true liberation within us, there has to be this willingness within us to go to the very places within us which we don't want to go, which we've been afraid to go. I found out early on that, as a kid, I grew up in a house with a father who was very grumpy, treated us, like we were all his little soldiers. And what I found is I developed all this anger within me. So many times in the beginning of the spiritual path, I would sit there. For years, this anger would just come forward into my consciousness, and I just felt like if I could out-meditate the anger, then I would be free. But many years later, my approach changed into the sense of being willing to walk into the anger, to drop into it, to feel into and experience it. And as I did, that anger began to move, it began to open, it began to release. And a funny thing happened. The anger began to shift into the direct experience of power, the direct experience of being embodied. I thought, oh, how wonderful this is. Walking into this place which I was once afraid of, which I deeply wanted to avoid. And to find this experience of power, to find an experience of deep integration. And so it's an incredible thing for us to be willing to open these doors within ourselves, to explore all the different aspects of our psyche, to explore the different aspects of our wound, to allow them to heal, to allow these energies within us to transform, to release, to be liberated. And then what we'll find is it's much easier, greatly easier, to experience greater worlds of bliss, of openness, of peace, of intelligence, more greater and fuller non-dual realities will become permanent states within us if we're willing first to explore all the aspects of ourself, which we've been trying so desperately to avoid.